Welcome back to the Lou Perez podcast with me, Lou Perez. It's our Halloween special that we're celebrating right now. For those of you who have video, you can see that I'm wearing a very interesting costume. And it's so apropos because I have a very interesting guest. Her name is Lenore Skenazy. She's the founder of Let Grow, as well as Free Range Kids. Lenore is awesome, and I had such a great time talking with her. We talked about childhood, we talked about play, we talked about Halloween, we talked about a kid who happens to have a real animus against Infiniti cars. It's a lot of fun, and I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you use this as some motivation to get out there, to go trick-or-treating, to get yourself some candy. You owe yourself some sweets. Go bonkers. All right. Here we go.
That was perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, the guy who edited said, yeah, man, you've been like going from the 3, 2, 1 countdown right into your spiel. So he's like, to help us out, could you take a beat? So I took a moment, maybe a moment of contemplation.
Reflection.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just throughout the day. And percussion as well. Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, listening to the Lou Perez podcast, I'm so excited to be joined by Lenore Skenazy. She's with Let Grow, and she's also the founder of Free Range Kids. And I just found out she was a journalist for 14 years, and she wrote for Mad, she wrote for Cracked. She's
not
a black...
Crack, right?
Right.
She did not write for Crack.
Right. There was a magazine called Crack Magazine that, they could have easily have just, transitioned into a crack dealership, but,
they had the URL, for God's sake.
It was there.
Yeah.
It was there for
bad business decision. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Lenore, I think the last time we spoke, I think it was in a sort of a group of parents. There was like an online sort of.
Oh yeah. It's all coming back. It's all that crack.
We spoke in a group of parents.
That's right.
Yeah. So I was actually at the time the only parent to be.
Right.
So at that time I wasn't a dada.
Uh-huh.
So, but I'm still. I guess I'm still not a dada because my son doesn't speak yet. But that's where I am. So, how have you been holding up during this whole situation?
It's great! Wow, this is just the greatest thing that's happened to the world. Don't you have to agree? I've been okay. How are you?
I'm surprisingly doing better than I thought I would. We
it's because you have a baby. Everything seems hopeful and good.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I got called in to do an audition for Clorox bleach, right? So when I say I got called in, I was asked to submit tape of Clorox bleach for this audition. And apparently this is what commercials are doing now. They don't give you any copy. They're looking for real people or actors who could be real people, which is just interesting on its face. The idea
it's really interesting, because everything's from home.
Yeah. And also the whole idea that actors aren't real people too. Really? we want somebody who's a little chubby or something like that, someone who hasn't shaved in a while. And so what they wanted is for you to talk about. There were 2 questions. They want you to go off the cuff about have you been able to see family during COVID, the lockdowns, and what
have you been drinking bleach?
Have you cured COVID by drinking bleach? And then the other one was, what are you hoping, or what do you look forward to when, sort of the pandemic is over and life is back to normal? And I don't think I got it. I don't think I got the role. I didn't even get a call back, but I think I gave Clorox some really good material because I talked about how my wife and I, we had our baby in March 26th, the height of the insanity.
Yeah, really crazy. Wow.
In New York City. We were quarantined for so long. I think my parents got to hold our baby maybe 3 months, into his life. And the one wish that I had was for things to go back to normal is for my son to be able to go outside and see people without masks on. And,
Mm-hmm.
and the big reason why my son is he's a baby, he's adorable. People love looking at him and they smile. But the thing is, he can't see them
Yeah,
smiling because the mask is there. So I would love my son to be able to walk out and see firsthand the amount of joy that he's actually bringing to the world.
right,
Um,
right, right. Get the smiles he deserves, right?
yeah,
And give the smiles to us. Yeah, that would be cool.
exactly.
It happens soon.
So Clorox bleach. Look, if you guys end up using my copy, and if they end up using my copy, and they have a guy who looks like me with a beard, doing this stuff.
Yeah, a little
Uh,
younger.
yeah, a little. We want someone who's a little younger, more believable, being a real person. So I'm
Being
coming
you.
after you. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, what if anything, has anyone measured just the psychological effect of mask wearing? And this is
Oh,
without getting into the science of masks or anything like, but just
hmm.
what impact is that going to have on kids?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I have no idea, although I do think that kids are incredibly resilient. I was thinking,
Mm,
what if World War One was on the horizon and there was just a tsunami of articles in Parents Magazine, how to talk to your child about the Archduke of, Archduke Ferdinand,
right.
10 tips for getting through a world war, what is trench warfare and how to explain it to your kids. Because we've just gotten to the point where we think that they have to be talked to about everything. I think that, most kids are going to go through this period and they're going to think back on it the way, our grandparents thought back on, the Depression. Wow, that was rough, but that was still regular life. And now we're in a different time. I don't think that the mask wearing is going to have any permanent impact on their psyches.
That's great. That's great to hear. And actually, another friend of mine who has a son, I think he just turned 4. She was talking about that resiliency as well.
It's
And
just normal. I mean, think about anything that, basically kids think that everything that they're growing up with was normal. I grew up with parents, they never yelled. I had no idea that people yelled. I mean, that's you just take as normal whatever you're surrounded by. But if you're asking about the impact of the pandemic and being sent home from school in March, and then that drifting into summer. We did do a study at Let Grow. We did a survey of 800 kids and 800 parents, and then we did it again a couple months later, asking some kind of questions that we were curious about. Like, we asked the kids, "What new thing are you doing now, just for fun, not because it's for school?" And I thought, fantastic answers. I mean, there are all these kids who are obviously biking and baking, but then there were kids who were really quirky and they were learning about fuses. And one kid was studying 1940s gangsters and they were taking pictures of bugs. And one girl who was 8 was getting into Bitcoin. And I don't know if that decimated the family finances or not, depending on what she did. Maybe it was great. Um, but what we were seeing is because kids had all this unprecedented free time, until now, one of the things like Rose been talking about all the time is that kids' time was so structured and
mhm.
so supervised. And you'd go, you'd wake up at a certain time and you get to school. And then after school, there's piano and chess and soccer and then travel soccer and then, galaxy soccer. And then there's coming home and there's your dinner and your reading log and your homework and your bedtime, more reading. And there was just so little time for them to figure out anything that they were interested in because they were slotted. Every moment of the day was pretty spoken for. And so when they suddenly had neither school nor after school activities, and their parents were busy on Zoom calls or busy trying to find a job or busy weeping, whatever it was, they really found themselves in a way that was pretty impressive and I would say psychologically good. And there have been a couple studies that weren't done by us. Since then, there was one in England, and then there was another one that was just Jean Twangy did it that found that kids were actually less stressed in some ways during COVID than they were during the school year when, as I said, their lives were very regimented and supervised.
So do you see this kind of as a throwback to like the earlier days of play?
Yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah, that's exactly what I see. And by play, I don't just mean, everybody going to the sandlot and playing baseball. It's also play is like figuring out something that's fun for you to do. One kid told us that he was so bored because school had ended, but their online school hadn't started yet. So he had like 2 weeks of literally nothing to do, that he picked up his guitar and he started watching YouTube and started learning to play. And he said the ironic thing is that he actually had two guitars, but he had never wanted to play them because it was always like, shouldn't you be studying guitar? Or, it was always from somebody else, from an adult. And when it came from him, and that's what we kept seeing, when the interest came from a kid, that's when they were turned on. And, well, you can ask me questions, but I'll tell you a cute story if you want about a teacher who was surprised.
Sure. Yeah. No, I'd love to hear that story. And, something with, that I remind myself with my son is he's 6 months old.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is new.
Yeah. Right.
Everything is new to him. Shapes are new to him. Colors are new to him. Where, something as mundane as a cup is suddenly this incredible gadget. Like it's almost as complicated as this microphone.
Right.
And it's something where as an adult, I'm 38 years old, and I've as I was getting ready to talk to you, I was just trying to think of like, when was the last time that I played? In the way that you're talking, about like discovery.
You'll never see that young man going through here.
I know.
He's the subway rider, by the way. He's the one who rode the
he got
lines.
really low. He got really low.
Right.
That
barely visible.
Yeah, barely visible. And we could talk about that that too. But yeah, how about we hear that cute story? I'd like to.
Well, yeah, and I also want to say that cup is so fascinating to the kid because he's got to figure out how to deal with it. And you know what? Cups are going to play a big role in his life. And he recognizes that. He sees other people like you and your wife using them all the time, although it looks like you're still drinking from a bottle there. I guess that's
My
sort of a
baba.
cup. Yeah.
Yeah, the people who aren't watching the video, I got a adult baba that I put in. I've been making the mistake of drinking pre-workout shakes and not working out. So there's
very pre.
Yeah, very very pre. It's maybe
Months.
a few months from now. So that's what this baba.
Okay, well,
is for.
I've mastered an actual cup with a giant hole at the top. I don't have to
Look at that.
yeah. So watch this.
Whoa.
Yeah, but I didn't, I wasn't born knowing how to do it. And what your kid is recognizing is the tools of the trade, the things that he's going to be using all his life. And of course, kids are very much drawn to whatever is out there that, if your kid was in a, hunter-gatherer society, he'd be, very fascinated, probably fascinated anyway, by spears.
Mm-hmm.
And arrowheads, and your kid is just going to be glomming onto whatever is around, which is why a lot of kids, of course, are fascinated by tech. That's what we're on all the time. So it's not a weird thing that they would be attracted to it. It's not horrible that they want to play with your phone or your computer. It's everybody wants to use the tools of their society. Anyways, which brings me to this wonderful teacher who I love, whose name is Gary, on Long Island, and he had his third grade class do the Let Grow project last year, which I'll tell you all about. It's just it's a homework assignment. We promote it, obviously, because we are Let Grow, but it's free. And the whole idea is that the kids are told the homework assignment is to go home and do something on your own without your parents. And you can take a walk, you can make dinner, you can babysit, you can ride your bike, whatever it is. And he had fantastic experience with that. He's totally on board. But then suddenly he's home with his own kids. And his 13-year-old, it's upsetting to him because his 13-year-old is always online and they're trying to shove him outside. And he's sneaking the phone into the bathroom and they can see and they're like, come on, you're supposed to be making the most of this time. This is terrible. And then it turned out that what the kid was doing was sneaking in so that he could put in his headphones and listen to podcasts about cars because that was his absolute interest was cars. And he was particularly interested for some reason, and I don't know why, in slamming the Infiniti. He just hates Infiniti cars, and he wanted to start a blog about why the Infiniti car is so terrible. And I have no idea if it is terrible or not. But in any event, his parents were mad until we started talking about it. And Gary, here he is on board. Children have other interests besides school. They should be developing them. It's great for kids to do things on their own. It's like, what do you think your kid is doing, Gary?
Right.
He is doing research on his own. He is finding things to listen to. He is absorbing information. He's figuring out how to make a website. He's writing. These are all skills that if they were in your classroom, you would be saying, this is great. We're going to learn how to write well. We're going to learn how to synthesize the information that we get from many sources and pull it together. That's what he's doing only because he's interested in cars. And so it's really hard to recognize what kids are doing when they're learning, because we're so used to thinking of learning as what goes on in the classroom, and that kids are generally bored when doing it or recalcitrant, and they're going to be graded, and it's a big deal, and it's homework, and so much is riding on it. But what your kid is doing at age 6 months is what Gary's kid was doing at age 13 years, which is looking around, finding something fascinating, and learning about it. That is education. And we're seeing a whole lot of that education, particularly during COVID, because the kids have the free time to figure out what does interest them.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, if Infiniti is interested in sponsoring the show,
we will take that part out.
We will cut that out, or I will actually go to Gary's house and have words with his son. I don't know what they drive, but I will take a baseball bat to anything on 4 wheels in their driveway if it isn't an Infiniti car.
There you go.
Yeah, that's
You're looking for work, Lou? Am I reading between the lines here?
I'm looking for some odd jobs. If anybody,
Really.
if anybody could help me out on that.
Mm-hmm.
We're in Brooklyn, and fortunately, we're actually by some parks, and there was something that happened a little while ago. Talking about play. We were in the park, the three of us, and there was a kid named Sammy. And
they're all named Sammy and Brooklyn.
Yeah. Well, we weren't introduced to this kid, but we found out his name because his mother kept yelling Sammy because his mother had a problem with every single thing that Sammy was doing, right? And Sammy, maybe he was 3 years old or something like that, and Sammy was holding a baseball bat, and he was. It was like a baseball bat, and I think he had like maybe a soccer ball or something like that. And he was developing sort of a game on his own where he was combining the baseball bat and the soccer ball.
How
right?
fantastic, yes.
Yeah, but not to his mother. No. His mother got very upset and said, "Sammy, that's a baseball bat. You have to play baseball," right? and here's the kicker, right? So she positions him as if he's at bat, right? As if he's about to take a pitch. And she has his hands the wrong way on the bat, right? And so she doesn't even know how you're supposed to hold a baseball bat if you actually want to play baseball. And yet she's yelling at her son. And the whole time I'm just thinking to myself, let this friggin' kid play. Let him figure this out. Let him invent something. Let him do whatever he wants with the bat outside of, hitting somebody with it. And it's like, it seems like such an easy thing for a parent I'm just going to step back and let him do his thing. But yet she was,
She
in
couldn't.
his face about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I think childhood is so weird today is that we are around our kids so much. I mean, that seems to be kind of new. I have a feeling, Lou, that when you were growing up, your mom wasn't with you all the time that you were playing, correct?
Right. Oh, yeah. Right on.
Right. So I feel like when parents are there, a couple of things happen. One is, of course, they can pay so much attention to the kid that the kid never realizes like what it requires to get somebody real to pay attention to him or want to play with him. And so that's bad, because when kids are playing with each other, you sort of learn how to get along and how to read a person well enough to have them want to play with you. You're not so boring or so domineering or cheating all the time to the point where nobody wants to play with you. So play actually is really good practice. It's not even practice. It really is a way to learn how to get along in a group, make decisions, make something happen. But the other thing, when parents are with their kids all the time, they know that they know more than the kid you're doing. Well, except for this mom who had no clue, but they do know like how to cross the street better, how to share better, how to, organize boy, girl better, whatever it is. And so they feel compelled to do it because the kids are such morons. They're not going to do it themselves. And of course, by the time a parent is doing it, then the kids aren't learning how to do it. So part of the problem today is just this mandate that we think is real, of that we have to be with our kids all the time, because that way we're keeping them safe and we're giving them our expertise and we're helping them so much. And actually what we're doing is, I'd say, a little stunting, because that kid now isn't making up a game, right? He's not making a friend. His mom has just inserted herself into his social circles, right? So he's not befriending your kid or any of the other kids. So I don't blame parents for being with kids all the time, because I feel like it's a message that we've gotten from a crazy society that insists on, fantasizing that all children are in danger all the time unless a mom or dad is there. But I am trying to make it normal again to give kids what you had, and certainly what I had, which is some free, unsupervised time.
Yeah, right on. One of the last night, I don't know if this is sort of just the perfect example of the times that we live in, but we do bath time around 6:30, and the little guy is put to bed around 7 p.m.
Great, so nice and early. Great.
I know. So we put him to bed, and my wife and I were on the couch, and she discovered this app called like Baby Maker or something like that.
I think you come equipped with that app.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
I'm a proven product.
Right.
So yeah, it's not an app where like you plan out your cycle or anything like that. What it is you take a picture of the husband, you take a picture of the wife.
Oh, and then it mashes them up.
And then it mashes it up, and we're doing this, and we just called out how ridiculous it was, because we already have what the baby would look like. He's sleeping right now. We could go in there.
You probably have a picture on your phone.
we have at least one picture of this kid every 5 minutes of the life. And it was sort of I don't know if we had a little too much free time. We actually went on we took a little family vacation to Portland, Maine.
I love that time.
It was our first time there. It was fantastic. We ate lobster multiple times a day. But the one thing we didn't factor in was the fact that little guy goes to sleep at 7 p.m. So now mommy and daddy are stuck in the hotel room at 7 p.m. But we made do. We watched this fun documentary with a terrible title called My Teacher, the Octopus. Have you seen that on Netflix?
No.
It's a documentary filmmaker in Australia, I believe. Is it Australia or New Zealand?
Maybe it's Tasmania.
Yeah. One of
Down there.
those places. He ends up having a relationship, a friendship with a female octopus, and it's not sexual or anything like that. I don't think he had enough time because apparently
I'd like to see that Baby Maker app.
Yeah, I know, it's just the tentacles going.
Right, only 4.
Yeah. But apparently the octopus only lives for a year, and I didn't know that. But
Ooh.
You haven't seen. No spoilers or anything like that. But if you want to talk about an animal, a wild animal that uses play and discovery and adaptation very swiftly, if you actually think about it. I mean, the lifespan is only a year.
Wait, their normal lifespan is a year? It's not like this one died prematurely?
Yeah. Apparently the normal lifespan is about a year.
Okay.
And it was really incredible just seeing that in the animal kingdom.
Wow.
How play is also a form of adaptation.
Wow. So I'm going to start regaling you with play stuff if I can. But I just wrote down my Teacher, the Octopus. That sounds great. Except if it's really, really sad at the end when the...
No, I think there's something, obviously it's going to end with, the death of the octopus, but there's so much mystery there and so much wonder. And you come away with it, knowing a lot more about not only this animal, but also this relationship, this bond that can form between human beings and animals. So I thought it was great. I thought it was a really great thing. Again, the title though.
No, I like that.
You like this? Yep.
Yeah, it's very intriguing.
The follow-up will be My Substitute Teacher, the octopus.
Right, the
something.
centipede.
Yeah,
Right.
the calamari.
right. My substitute, the appetizer. So here's the deal. One of the co-founders with me of Let Grow is a guy named Peter Gray. And before your child gets another day older, I'd say go read his book, which is called Free to Learn. He's a psychology professor from Boston College. He wrote the big psychology textbook that's used all across America, 7th edition, blah, blah, blah. But his real interest is play, and especially mixed age play. But anyways, he points out that all animals play. It's not just the octopus. It's not just your kid. Hippopotami do backflips in the water just for fun. And supposedly, I've never seen this myself, but ravens fly to the top of a hill, like a snowy hill, and they glide down on their backs. And ants supposedly play fight, which I'm happy that's not my research field. But the example that he likes to give is that gazelles, when they're very young, they play in a way that's sort of familiar to us. They chase each other. It looks a lot like tag. One will chase the other, and then it'll turn around, and one will chase the other one. And Peter asks why, considering that this is really kind of dumb from an evolutionary perspective. In that they're wasting all their energy, not making anything, or not gathering any food, which means that they're going to have to gather more food later and eat whatever it is, more of it, because they've just used up all these calories. And B, lions, right? Yeah. Here they are, they're chasing each other, like, look at me, I'm looking at you, my name is Scar. And so I can't even do that accent, my name is Scar. But anyways, so why are they doing that? Why don't they just sit by their mother gazelle and read educational books and grow up and then start their lives? And he points out that it must be because free play is even more important for the future of the species and for evolution than just playing it safe. And what they are learning, of course, is to run away from predators and to find their food or whatever. And so play is the way that Mother Nature installed sort of operating instructions for us to start learning about how to deal with the world. And of all the animals on Earth, humans play for the longest period of time. I mean, we start, from your kid, 6 months on up through adolescence. Kids are always playing and goofing around. And I'd say we're sort of playing now and that we're having fun. Yeah. And the reason is that that's how you learn how to do all the things you're going to have to do. Aside from getting along, you have to figure out how to compromise. If I'm playing, if I want to play with you and we both want to be the dog, okay, I'll be the cat and then we'll switch, right? Or I'll be the octopus and you'll be the human and I'll die and then we'll switch. So you're learning how to get buy-in from the other kids so that they'll play with you. And if you're such a jerk that nobody wants to play with you, you're learning to modify your behavior. I mean, one of the reasons that I sometimes think everyone's so obsessed by bullying these days is because it is harder to learn how to not be a bully. Harder to pull yourself together because your teacher says don't be a bully than it is to pull yourself together because you want to be included in that basketball game. Mm-hmm. And so that's it. You just can't take free play out of kids' lives and replace it with organized activities because, once again, that's when somebody else is deciding whether the ball was in or out and who's on which team and whose turn it is to bat. And so the whole idea of the octopi playing around, all species are learning how to do that. And the way my friend Penny Wilson describes it, and you might appreciate this or not, is that she says fun is the orgasm of play. and what she meant by that is that there's this drive to play because you're gonna have fun, but in the meantime you have to decide the rules, you have to hold yourself together, you have to content yourself if everybody decides that you're gonna be last or whatever. And there's all these difficult hoops you had and I guess behaviors you have to internalize before you get to finally play the game. Think how many times you hear kids arguing before they finally play the game or while they're playing the game so that they can get to the next part, so they can get to the fun. And she says, she makes the analogy of an orgasm because it's sort of like this is the other drive that humans have, that all species have, that push them along the chain of life. So they learn how to play and then they procreate. And you need both of those because if you don't learn how to play, your chances of later on having somebody want to procreate with you are slimmer.
Right, right. And is there noticeable differences between the way boys play and girls play? I think it's sort of a leading
I think
question.
so.
I think
Yeah.
I've noticed it. Like I came from a household with a mom, a dad, and five boys all
Oh
together.
wow, that sounds so
Um,
fun.
yeah, and my dad, is one of those dads from like the '80s and '90s who had the camcorder and would videotape Christmases and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Well, we lived in a 3 bedroom apartment, and none of us slept in our bedrooms. We all slept in the living room. Like all the boys, well, at least me and my two younger brothers would camp out in the
Oh
living room
wow, how
every night,
fun.
like wild men. I think our backs are going to be okay from just sleeping on the hard, carpeted floor. And just a little knock on my dad because this is my podcast and I could knock him a little bit.
There you go.
One of the walls that we had in our apartment in the living room was mirror from floor to ceiling. So my dad thought that the best way to capture our Christmas mornings would
Hmm.
be to set the camera up so he records the reflection in the mirror and captures us.
Okay.
Okay, and it didn't work. It didn't work. There's something off about those videos. But here I am now. I make videos and movies, Dad. So I'm gonna do it the right way. But in those videos, what he captures are three little maniacs. Me and my two younger brothers. My older brothers are like 12 and 8 years older than I am,
Oh
but me
wow.
and my younger brothers were like chimpanzees, like monkeys. We
Hmm.
would punch each other and be wild and scream and do all of that. I'm not necessarily saying that punching each other is the way to go, um,
There,
but it's very different from what I see
yeah.
now with
Yeah.
kids.
I have one sister, zero punching ever. I don't think I've ever been punched in my life. Punching sounds like you actually sound like the Three Stooges, you and your two brothers. And you can always tell a person's genetic makeup, like whether they have a Y chromosome and whether they think the Three Stooges is the worst thing ever or hysterically funny. So I have two sons and a husband. They all love the Three Stooges. So yeah, I think there is something, often very different about the way the two genders play. I didn't do any of the rough and tumble stuff, but rough and tumble is actually quite good. I mean, there's something weird about boys. It seems to me that it's not necessarily resented, and it almost seems to be a bonding thing, which
Yeah.
as a girl doesn't make any sense. But I've seen it enough that I sort of have to believe it.
I was I like growing up. I really wasn't that big of a fan of the rough and tumble stuff as far as far as I remember it.
Hmm.
I mean, we would play tackle football and stuff like that. So maybe there was an element of
Hmm.
it there,
Hmm.
but there was a period of maybe like I don't know, 15 years, like when I went to high school, where I was just like, dude, don't even like, I don't want to be touched. Get away from me. And it wasn't until I think I was around like close to 30 years old when I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is all grappling, which is all rough and tumble, which is all wrestling
Isn't that the
and
choking thing? Or?
yeah, oh, yeah. A lot
Yeah,
of choking. So
a lot
you're
of
you're
choking.
basically attempting to choke your partner or break your partner's limb. You don't go
Nice.
all the way because you're able to you tap out beforehand. So those are the rules of the game, right?
Hmm.
And I got to tell you, like when I would roll, that's what they call it. There's an element there where you feel like a kid. There's an
Wow.
element there where if your partner does get you in a move that is a very painful move and you tap out afterwards, you're like, whoa, man, that was awesome. Whoa, how'd you do that?
Really?
Yeah, and I would love. There are different belts, so like in different martial arts, and I've had the privilege of rolling with black belts, which are
Probably
at the
pretty
top.
damn good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, pretty damn good. And the ease that they can just throw you around and even put you in positions that would be life ending, but do it so smoothly, and it's almost like you're light as a feather, and it's pretty incredible. But you don't get to that point without sort of walking through the fire and getting your ass handed to you
Hmm.
quite a bit, and that's actually something that I do miss with
Oh
with
yeah.
with COVID.
Yeah.
I know that there are schools out there where people are training, and there are, certain, I guess, sign offs and stuff like that where, people are allowed legally to, to train people. But yeah, I guess, I don't know when I'll, feel totally comfortable about going back and basically hugging other sweaty men
Mm-hmm.
for, 5 minute rounds.
Is that what is
Of
it?
course.
Is it 5 minutes? Like, does it stop after 5 minutes? If
Oh, well, a lot of the classes would be you'd sort of drill new moves, right? So there'd be like warm ups, then you'd drill some moves, and then at the end of it would be you be rolling. So
Mhm.
for some schools, 5 minutes would be a regular round. Other schools, 8 minutes would
Ooh.
be a regular round, and I mean it's just an incredible workout, and it also really puts into perspective what strength is, because you could be somebody who is incredibly strong when it comes to picking up weights, but then you go against somebody who their strength might be their squeeze or something like that, and you're like, whoa, it's so that's a kind of some play that I'd like to get back to at some point.
Oh, I hope it's soon. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Weirdly great.
Weirdly great. Oh, and it's something where jujitsu is something. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter your sex. Women, there are amazing women jujitsu practitioners out there, and it's something. At least when I got into it, I'm like, damn, I wish I had started this when I was a kid. But
Mm.
but I wasn't that kid. I wasn't that guy. At the time. And actually, I might use this as a way to sort of transition into, my son's 6 months old, and we're very happy that he's a very smiley boy.
Oh, that is
He,
great.
and we've met other there are some other kids in our building that are about the same age, and they look like pissed off old men, like
Gulag.
yeah, yeah, exactly. They're the last of the kulaks, who have watched their farms be taken by the Soviets. And so I'm really fortunate. I think we're fortunate that he's a happy baby, he's a chill baby, and
That's great.
and all that. But part of me, I'm like, man, I hope that he doesn't get all of me, because I was sort of a melancholic child, I think,
Mm.
in a way, and a sensitive child, and where things would hurt me and really just go to the core of me. And how can so and so say that to me? I thought he loved me. I thought we were best friends, and that sort of element. And while having that has gotten me to where I am today, and
Yeah.
there are things to be happy about. I know how much
You'd
it
rather just be
hurts.
happy.
Yeah. I know how much it hurts. So so
Yeah.
I'm and we're sort of, I'm looking at him and I'm like, man, what do I need for this recipe? What's the formula to make sure that he's a happy boy
The
and all that.
formula.
Yeah,
The
what's the
formula is
formula?
called, it starts with an L, it ends with a K. It's called luck. Right. Go get some. You're going to need it. If there was a formula, somebody once pointed out, you go to the store, the bookstore, or we used to, or you go to Amazon, and there are a million books about how to raise your kids. And if anybody knew, there'd just be one, right? And it would be called The Book You Need. And everybody would say, oh, this one worked. My kid is happy, well-adjusted, productive, hardworking, intelligent, and kind. And you're like, okay, I'll take that one.
Hmm.
But as you'll see, if you baby make again, you're going to have two totally different kids. And it's not because you're a totally different parent. It's not because you're in a totally different part of the world. It's just the luck of the draw. And I think one of the reasons that we are driven so crazy as parents is because of this really hubristic and also burdensome idea that we can make our kids into happy, well-adjusted wonderkins who also get into Stanford or not. And there's this burden. I mean, if you read some of these parenting books, actually, I meant to find the exact pages of these parents' magazines that were driving me crazy recently, but there was this one. It was Raise a Reader.
Raise a reader.
Raise a reader. You know what? I raised two kids, and one sort of writes for a living, and one hasn't. I actually took him to meet the guy who'd written The Sports Gene, David Epstein. And he went up to David, and he said, "Guess? Oh, I love you. That's the only book I ever read." I'm like, but it's true. So how do you raise a reader? I don't know, because I raised one and not another. But these magazines give you advice that could drive you absolutely crazy. I'm looking for the page. I can't find it, but I'll tell you about it. It's like, how do you raise a reader? Well, children may be attracted to the pictures in their picture books, but that's terrible, because then they're not learning about reading, and only about 6% of the page is devoted to words. And you got to focus on that and start getting them to understand that this is a word and this is the title. And then here's a great idea. Really, one of these recent Parents magazines said, when you're reading the title, why not count the letters in the words? And I'm like, ugh. Yeah, ugh. Let's do it one more time. Ugh. Right? Because it has taken something that is often enjoyable. Maybe kids don't like reading themselves, but they do love being read to. Not that I read to my kids all the time, not my mom read to me, but they like stories. But if you start turning the story into this horrible didactic lesson where now, don't just look at the picture of the fox. There's the word fox, F-O-X. X is a rarely used letter. If we play Scrabble, you'll get 8 points. F is more common. How many letters are in fox? F-O-X, that's 3 letters, but maybe it sounds like F-O-C-K-S, which would be 5 letters. It's like you've taken anything normal out of that experience and you've turned it into the world's worst classroom lesson.
Right.
And one of the things that's so interesting to me is that there's this guy named David Lancy, who is an anthropologist of childhood. And he points out that school is pretty recent. I mean, most people didn't go to school until maybe 200 years ago or 150 years ago, sort of in the Industrial Revolution. And ever since then, we keep getting more and more enamored of the idea of the classroom being a way and a teacher being a way that children learn, which it is. It's a way that kids learn some things, but it's not the only way kids learn. But because it's official learning, now parents are starting to feel like they have to be teachers at home. I mean, why else would you be reading, counting the number of letters in a picture book that you're reading to your kid, unless you thought that I'm the teacher, I better be helping him with his numbers as well as his letters. It's like, no, you're the parent. You can relate to him, you feed him, you discipline him, and you let him have some free time. And that's it. We don't have to make the idea that every moment is this teachable moment. And that if you're wasting the time by just hanging out and, looking at the pictures, well, and your kid's going to fall behind because you're not making it into a bigger lesson. That's a new thought, and it's a huge burden on parents, and it doesn't work, and it's a drag. So try to ignore advice that sounds hard because you usually don't need it.
Right. You were talking about sort of school being a fairly new thing. My dad is from Argentina, and he's from San Miguel de Tucumán. It's called. It's a state in sort of like the Northwest. And when my dad was 8 years old, his father passed away. He died of, I think it was throat cancer or something like that. So my dad basically grew up without a father, and my grandmother was left with like all these kids. So my dad and his brothers would work. So my dad was, I think, 7, maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, with a horse and buggy.
Wow.
Going around, and I think one of the things that they sold were Seltzer.
You're kidding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So he'd be going around the streets of Tucumán. This little boy. I can only imagine what he looked like selling Seltzer. And he told me this really funny thing where he said, in Argentina you have kind of like where he's from is sort of a very kind of a small city. And then you have country people, and I think he described some of the country people as not being very good. They couldn't really do like addition the long ways, like adding up multiple things. Mm-hmm. So even as a kid, he used to use that for his advantage and screw them over.
Nice.
And wait, hold on, I got to go and edit that. Not even as a kid. As a kid, my dad doesn't screw people over like that. But for me, it's such a my dad. It's such a delicious history because he's in his 70s, but he's not he's not ancient. Mm-hmm. But yet there was a part of the world where it was normal for kids to work like that, and then also to have these interesting, almost comical interactions and get one over on the adults.
What's interesting to me is that it feels like it's from another planet
Yes.
to a certain extent. I mean, there are, 7-year-olds who aren't allowed to do anything. One of the things I work on is trying to change laws and practices. And there was a mom in Kentucky who was saying that her son wasn't allowed to walk home from the bus stop, the 2 blocks, because the school insists that an adult be there to walk them home. And not only is that a burden for any mom who has to quit her job so she can stand at the bus stop and walk her kid home, but what an undermining of the human spirit. Not that I want all 7-year-olds to be selling seltzer in the streets and screwing over their customers, but I think the fact that your dad could handle that shows that we are vastly underestimating any kind of moxie that kids have, while and also treating them like everything has to be this lesson taught by us. Everything is academic. It's like there's so much that he learned, obviously, from being responsible. And also, I mean, to a certain extent, I mourn for, my kids didn't have this either, almost a chance to be so important to their family. I mean, this is not a kid wondering like, who am I? I'm just a jerk. I'm a nobody. It's like, no, by, bringing home that $5 a week, you're helping, put food on the table. And that's a very, it's tragic in one way that a kid has to, leave school and work so hard. And it's ennobling in that he is an important human being with responsibility and joy, the joy of helping out and not just being somebody who's given everything.
Yeah, my dad, he's a butcher, and we have a family we have a family butcher shop in Spanish Harlem, up in Spanish Harlem, Casablanca Meat Market, 110th between Park and Lex, and they're open, ladies and gentlemen. They Casablanca Meat Market and Infiniti will be sponsoring this this episode.
Right, and Clorox. Wait, is it near? Isn't there a museum of salsa right there?
Oh, there might be, because it's the barrio.
Yeah.
So when we were growing up, we would go and work there every now and then. And looking back, like, man, I wish that I had embraced that more, especially as a I think before I hit my teens. Like, I wish I'd gone there more and worked, because I think not only I think definitely the stories that you could tell. There's something that when I walk by, say, a restaurant or even like the meat packing district, there's that smell of
takes you back
of meat that it like almost like a putrid smell of meat that takes me back, and I absolutely love it. And it's sort of, I'm back at my family's butcher shop. But then also just thinking about it now, like, the butchers are, they obviously get paid, a wage, but they get tips, and and what an amazing way to increase your tips than have 3 little kids in the background helping to ground make ground beef and stuff like that. Like we were a boon for the workers there.
Right.
We could have.
You were dressing on the set. Right?
Yeah, we were helping out. As far as contributing to the family and stuff, we've made it a point not to post pictures of our son online. My wife and I were both online for different reasons. I do comedy. She does kind of exercise and personal training and that sort of stuff.
She must be in fantastic shape. Wow,
she looks great. You wouldn't believe.
But I'll never see her. Oh no, I'll see her. I just
You'll
won't
see her.
Your kid.
You'll see her.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're public figures, if you will, and we really wanted our son to have the choice on whether or not he wanted to be a public figure. The thing that makes it tough is that he's so adorable. So we take a ton of pictures and we share it with, friends like yourself and also.
I want to see, yes.
Yeah. I gotta send you updates.
And I promise not to post it. Yeah.
Thank you. I gotta send you updates. I wonder, I mean, it's a thing where, it's like, oh, it would be so easy to sort of exploit my cute child and try to get them in a Gerber commercial and stuff like that. And I just want people to know, like, people listening, you haven't seen my kid. And I know that parents always think that their kid's cute and all like that. That's not the case here. Our son is objectively cute.
Right.
We get stopped on the street. We have people like, oh my God, look at that baby. That baby's so cute. We have other parents with kids
who
are
wish
like,
that they had your baby.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, to the point where I walk around like I'm a Clydesdale, where it's, I see other people, I see other parents in the park and I'm like, you chose wrong, honey.
Yeah.
You could have, you
Right.
could have
Didn't you? If you'd used that app, you would have known ahead of time. Right.
Exactly. But I don't know if you have any, thoughts on that.
On posting pictures? No, I don't worry too much about it. I feel like everything is out there. Everything is known by us. By the world. I just downloaded an app today to see where planes are coming in, because I live near LaGuardia, and you can actually find out what the planes are above you, and it's like, find out your address and your blood type and your husband's name and what's in your refrigerator, so we can show you these. I'm like, yeah, okay. Even though I realize that's bad, but in the heat of the moment, I want to see the planes. You just press yes. Mm-hmm. So they're tracking your son even without you're having pictures of him. Trust me.
Yeah. And he it's funny. There are some days where he looked just like me as a little kid, except with blonde hair and blue eyes.
Oh my God, that's too weird.
It was really weird. It was almost like my genes and my wife's genes. Like my wife's genes just kind of trimmed the fat, like just trimmed all the excess unnecessary,
no beard,
no beard or anything like that, literally trimmed the beard. Mm-hmm. And it was just sort of like, oh, this is what, if I were a perfect human being, this is what I would have looked like. If we were in like, if someone was fiddling with the DNA and all that. So.
Wow. Well, actually I have seen a picture and he is extremely adorable. So I have to second that. He's damn cute.
Thank you. This episode is sponsored by Let Grow, Free Range Kids.
Yes, right.
Infiniti and the Casablanca Meat Market.
Right.
So before we go, what are some new things that you're working on? Because it seems like you've been really busy.
Yeah. So first of all, with distance learning, normally we do a lot of our stuff through schools. This is a strange year. And so instead of having our Let Grow project where the teachers send the kids home with this assignment to do something on their own, we also have a Let Grow Independence Kit, which is the same thing. It's just for home use. And it explains to parents that there's really some enormous advantages to just letting your kids do some things on their own, even if they spill, even if they goof up, even if they're, whatever. There's always something good about a kid recognizing that they don't need you for, to help with everything. So we recommend the Let Grow Project or the Let Grow Independence Kit. And then just as COVID hit, there was a law passed in Utah 2 years ago called the Free Range Parenting Law, which said it's not neglect to let your kid play outside, walk home from school, come inside with a latchkey, or wait briefly in a car under some circumstances. And this was the first one in the country, and it got enormous publicity. And then we realized, well, there's 49 states to go. And so we started working on, now we call them a reasonable childhood independence law. But we're trying to get these passed in a bunch of states because we just don't want parents to have to second guess. I think my 6-year-old is ready to sell seltzer. Shouldn't that be up to me? And I'm just going to give him a horse and a cart. Or I think my 7-year-old can walk to the playground, or I think my 9-year-old can play after school in the park before he comes home. These things should be up to parents. I mean, they're not neglect. It's a decision to give kids some independence. Or sometimes a parent is so busy working, say you don't have a lot of money and you're working 2 jobs. You want your kid to be able to come home with a latchkey, get themselves a snack, do their homework, watch TV, and nobody to consider that neglect. And so Colorado had passed a law like that, the Reasonable Independence Act, in their House, and it was passed with a Democrat and a Republican sponsoring it. Black and white, Democrat, Republican. It passed unanimously in the House. It was 2 days away from being heard in the Senate when COVID shut down the entire Colorado state legislature. That was very painful. And something very similar happened in South Carolina. It had passed the Senate, but not the House. And so what we're trying to do now is get some more states on board with passing this law, because it it leaves CPS, Child Protective Services, free to go after what they should be going after, which is children who really are in danger and children who really are neglected. But just seeing a kid walking home from school shouldn't be a trigger that says, oh my God, that must be a horrible family. You need a higher bar before Child Protective Services or even the cops should get involved. So we have about 6 states that we're working with today. We had a wonderful call with people in Idaho. If you live in Idaho and you've been visited by Child Protective Services for any crazy reason, please write to me at Lenore@letgrow, LETGROW.org. And then we're just trying to reassure parents that even though their kids are going through this weird time, like we started out talking about, kids are resilient. Free time is actually good for them. They're learning in ways that might not be obvious to you, just like Gary didn't realize that his kid was learning almost everything you'd want him to learn at school by trying to do this podcast about Infiniti, or podcast or blog post or whatever he was trying to do. So just trying to help parents relax and recognize that the idea that things have to be perfect nothing has ever been perfect since the beginning of time. And children certainly don't need that. They certainly don't need perfect parents. So good luck on your journey and let grow.
There we go. I think that's a good place to stop. And for anyone listening, and this is your first time experiencing Lenore, she is so much fun always, and this is it always
more fun usually is what he's trying to say. Way more fun than I've been today, as we've been contemplating COVID and masks and depression and kids fighting with each other and growing up to choke each other. Yeah, a lot more fun usually.
You're always a blast, and it's always a reminder that I'm just happy that you're out there. Let Grow is out there. Free Range Kids is out there. Because the fact that we have to be reminded about how important this stuff is and how freeing it is wild. And I'm not sure. I haven't picked a date yet of when I'm going to be dropping this. But we are recording this a couple of weeks out from Halloween. And are there what's going on with Halloween? Will we be able to celebrate it the way we normally do?
Well, that's a sort of loaded question, in that I think that we've been celebrating Halloween with increasing trepidation over the last generation, and it's sort of lost a lot of its fun from what I can see, in that so many parents are driving their kids from house to house or going with them. And to me, Halloween was always like the one night of the year, for God's sake, one measly night of the year when kids get to dress up like they're going to work, or like they're going to work. They got to do cold calls. They got to get and they got to make the sale. They got to get the candy, right? And so what they had to do for that was be brave. Knock on doors of people they don't know. Be out in the dark. Hustle a little bit. And so to me, Halloween was always this fantastic, if only one day of the year, that parents had to go free range, right? And then we've been dialing it back so much that a lot of places will only do a trunk or treat. Do you know what trunk or treat is?
No, what is that?
Trunk or treat is billed as a safe alternative to trick-or-treating, as if trick-or-treating is not safe, which actually it is. So that's my objection to begin with. But then, and I don't even mind trunk or treat if it's in addition to trick-or-treating, but trunk or treat is when a bunch of cars get together in a parking lot of a church, a community center, school, and they make a big circle with the trunks facing in, which to me is the hardest part. It's like, oh my God, I'm so happy I never had to do that, because that seems like you'd have to maneuver it backwards. Anyways, then you open up the trunk and you decorate it in a festive way, and then you fill it with candy, and then kids just go kerplunk, 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 kerplunk around in a circle, and they get the candy, and that should be enough. And it's disturbing to me in several ways. One is, I don't think we should be teaching our kids to go to people's cars when they say, I've got candy, come look in my trunk. Right?
For decades, we've been saying the exact opposite.
Right. It's really off message, and it's safer than going to people's houses. Two, it really strikes me as the most parental of ideas, in that they've totally forgotten that it's not just about the candy. It's like, you got your candy and you got to see some skeletons. Isn't that enough? And it's like, no, you've taken away all the independence, all the surprise. You knock on the door, nobody seems to be home, you're leaving, and then the door opens up. It's like, wait, I have, and then it's the giant Snickers. Oh my God, what could be more exciting? And then you've also labeled the idea of regular Halloween as if it's this thing that kids couldn't possibly handle, when yes, they can. And you've taken away the one night of independence that we were still allowing them, and turned it into this orgy of candy and supervision. And so, is Halloween going to be different this year? Yes, but it's been different in a very distressing way the last decade or so to me.
Yeah, it's sort of a play on what that quote that you talked about. It's sort of play without the orgasm of fun, because ultimately, if it was just about the candy, all right, mom and dad can go and buy you a $10 bag of candy and say, okay, sit in your room and
really
and
put
eat
it
this
in
alone.
right. Put it in a pillowcase.
And now my heart goes out to Gary's son. The prospect of having that get candy from a trunk of an Infiniti sounds
it's the worst of all
nightmare.
possible. Yeah, it is. It's the bad.
Well,
so I actually, this year there are kids who are trick or treating. There are clever candy delivery systems that families are making, giant tubes and weird Rube Goldberg things, and sometimes little robotic contraptions. I don't think this is going to be the world's greatest Halloween this year, but maybe it will just remind people of what they're missing, and next year it'll go back to like going from house to house. That'd be great.
Yeah, right on. Lenore, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lou.
Really appreciate it.
This was fun. All right. Happy Halloween, if such a thing is to be.
Happy Halloween.